My name is Glenn Hutchins, and in case those of you on the left here, and I guess that's a good way of putting it, can't see it, Secretary Pritzker has arrived and sitting at the table right here, so it's my job to introduce her. But I'm on the board of directors of CAP, and someone who understands that role knows that we all really work for NERA. And NERA has asked me to make a few comments about an issue she and I have been discussing in advance. And that's an issue which lies squarely at the intersection of the topics that have been addressed today, particularly by this panel. By the way, thought that panel was terrific. Really, really interesting. I've heard a lot of these discussions about this subject, and few have been as substantive and informed as that. Well done. It was really, really good. Bravo. Good job. Huh? But what I want to talk about lies at the intersection of some of the issues that have been talked about today: business investments, household incomes, and technology. I'd like to propose to this group something to think about, which is I believe that income insecurity, as opposed to income inequality, is an important issue that should be scrutinized as a policy matter and could prove to resonate meaningfully as a political matter. Income insecurity is, as I read the evidence, highly descriptive of people's lives today because it's how they experience their personal finances in today's economy. Income insecurity reflects a variability in household income and spending. Recent studies have shown, for instance, that in any given month, individuals across about 60% of the income spectrum can experience swings in income that materially exceed their savings, 60% of the income spectrum. Because of a lack of savings, the average American household, according to another recent study, could not finance a $400 monthly shortfall in income without borrowing. Further, data suggests that this is not just a feature of poverty, but rather is widespread. Income insecurity results largely from, in my view, from the changing nature of work that was accelerated by the Great Recession, and as well as the application of new technologies. There's been an enormous downward pressure on wages and hours exerted by independent contractors, part-time workers, and freelancers, plus the large reserve army of the long-term unemployed and people who've dropped out of the labor force. Separately, new technologies and companies enable the division of jobs into tasks and the scheduling of labor hours with ever greater precision. Since hours or tasks can consequently vary significantly from month to month, household income is both unpredictable and volatile. And since spending can vary enormously from month to month, just think of healthcare expenses, car repairs, the timing of tuition payments, the attendant income volatility, when combined with widespread lack of savings, generates enormous household insecurity. As an aside, I was just saying earlier to Secretary Pritzker, I think this is one of the major features, and this is how I stumbled upon it, that has dampened consumption and GDP growth despite the large quantum of jobs that has been created in recent years. Income insecurity is, of course, most relevant to people with low incomes associated with inequality, but it's an entirely separate issue. I suspect from some polling data I've recently reviewed that income insecurity is quite relevant to people's day-to-day lives, while income inequality is a more abstract concept. I also think that the policy responses to these are materially different. Income inequality can best be addressed by a set of much-discussed public policies that are either very long-term in nature, educational reform or the type of investments in infrastructure that Larry Summers was talking about, or politically controversial, i.e. distributional tax and spending policies. For income insecurity, in contrast, there are very different and potentially quite innovative public policy responses from both the private sector and public agencies. These include savings, insurance, and credit products from private actors, as well as new forms of social insurance covering income rather than unemployment, or adjusting workman comp or OSHA rules to be more relevant to independent workers when they're targeted at people who work at a given place. So I offer you that food for thought. Now, on to the main act on this stage, Secretary Pritzker. I count myself fortunate to be a POP, P-O-P, and that means pal of Penny. In that fraternity, or maybe I should say sorority, we leap at any chance to tell the world about what an extraordinary person Penny is. She's rolling her eyes. You won't be surprised, I am sure, to know that Penny's staff loaded me up with adulatory things to say about her. And when I say loaded me up, they really backed up the truck, let me tell you. But that's only because she's accumulated a tractor-trailer load of accomplishments. In her nearly 30 years in business, Penny became a commercial legend. building a host of successful businesses in real estate and financial services all across the country. She was not just successful in business, but also a community leader serving on the Chicago Board of Education, chairing the Chicago Public Education Fund, and founding Skills for America, a national skills training initiative. As secretary, Penny has brought the same level of accomplishment and focus and service to her work at the Commerce Department, focusing particularly on issues that are vital to CAP's mission to promote inclusive growth and shared prosperity. Among her many accomplishments at Commerce, I would highlight her ongoing focus on skills, creating an initiative to provide America's workers the capabilities they need to be competitive in the modern economy and earn a living wage. And she cleverly, very much like Penny, combined that with her Open for Business agenda, which focuses on helping businesses expand investment, spur innovation, and simultaneously protect the environment. This approach of addressing workers and businesses as a package and helping them to be successful together is pure Penny. Insightful, pragmatic, goal-oriented, and uncommonly effective. I think it's obvious that Penny is among the most impactful secretaries of Commerce ever, which is no surprise to me or any of the other pops. But that's not the message I want to leave you with today. I want you to know that she offers a rare combination of ability, drive, creativity, compassion, and patriotism that makes her a very special person, and which makes us very, very fortunate that she has chosen to focus her talents on making our nation a better place, not just to live, but to work and to succeed. Penny Pritzker.
Glenn, that was amazing, and I'll be retiring right now. That was extraordinary, really. Thank you very much. And it was you who really pushed me to be here today, and I'm really thrilled to be here with this really distinguished cross-section of leaders in business, policy, government, academia, and labor. So thank you for really urging me to join you today. And Neera, thank you. Thank you for hosting all of us. The work you and your team do focusing on the most pressing policy issues and questions that face our country is invaluable. It's invaluable to those of us in government. You make us think every single day. You're always a resource. You and CAP are a resource for us to go to. And ultimately, the wisdom that comes from CAP not only benefits those of us working in the private sector and government, but also the American people. So thank you very much. Today's conference has examined another huge challenge that confronts the American both public and private sector, which is the desire to create long-term value that produces shared prosperity in an economy that is changing rapidly. During my 27 years in the private sector, I often faced choices between decisions that would yield immediate wins for a business owner and decisions that could create lasting potential for the business itself, for the workers, and for the shareholder. As a CEO, I know that at times there can be a great deal of pressure to pursue short-term profits at the expense of long-term value. Executives confront a constant balancing act between the interests of different stakeholders, including shareholders, employees, customers, activists, and the communities in which the businesses operate. And the job of the CEO is to keep that balance intact, to maintain a perspective that looks beyond the next quarterly earnings report and to partner with board members and management and the local community and their workforce and others to share a broader vision. I believe you discussed most of these issues earlier today. So now I want to focus on some observations that I have from my short tenure here in Washington, where I have seen similar pressures on senior leadership in government, where short-term demands can often crowd out long-term thinking. At times I find myself and my department stuck in a construct that does not support the kind of strategic investments needed to sustain our nation's competitiveness. We face constant pressure to accomplish all of our goals in 2, 4, 6, or if you're lucky, 8-year windows. And we operate with the uncertainty of a 1-year budget. And that is if you're fortunate enough to have a budget. In fact, budgets are often seen as tools in a political battle, rather than what they ought to be, which is a reflection of our investment priorities. Investments that serve the best interests of our government's primary stakeholder, the American people. When I came into the office as Secretary of Commerce, our team developed a strategic plan that provides our department with a clear mission to grow trade and investment, to support innovation, to provide environmental intelligence, to unlock our data for the benefit of businesses and the public, and to deliver our services with operational excellence. But in the course of implementing this vision, we constantly run up against the short-sighted budget process. For example, we need to continually manage and modernize our system for gathering weather information. We run the National Weather Service. Yet building, launching, and operating new satellites does not happen in 12-month increments. We want to produce the 2020 census using modern technology and systems, which could save the taxpayers $5 billion. Yet we struggle to get the authority to spend the $500 million needed to realize those savings. We're in the process of renovating our building and attempting to create a 21st century work environment. Yet year to year, we are never sure whether we are going to have the capital to do what's on the plan to renovate the building. So frankly, I think there ought to be a 3-year budget cycle to really plan and execute these kinds of large-scale projects. I believe that our existing short-term planning leaves our nation at risk of falling behind our competitors across the globe. Indeed, in my travels around the world as secretary, I've seen how foreign governments are changing the way they think and invest. They're constructing new roads, light rail, airports, smart power grids, and more, all with an eye to sharpening their competitive edge for the long term. Over the course of the more than 2 years in this job, I've thought a great deal about how can our government alter the way we do business? What does the United States need to do to sustain and expand our global competitiveness? How can we step back from the short-term pressures and pursue a long-term strategy with a higher likelihood of spurring prosperity that is sustainable, inclusive, and broadly shared? What is America's path forward? The answers depend on all of us, those of us in business, in government, in labor, and in the nonprofit sector. The answers depend on the choices that we make together to strengthen our economy and to create lasting value for our workforce, for our communities, and for our companies. The answers depend upon whether we're willing to make key long-term investments. Investments in our people, so we utilize 100% of our talent. Investments in innovation and entrepreneurship, so we remain on the cutting edge. And investments in our infrastructure, so we can move our products and ideas at the speed required in the 21st century. To create long-term value across our economy, America's path forward must invest in our greatest resource, our people. Winning the war for talent is imperative if our country is to outcompete and lead the rest of the world. Earlier this month, I traveled to Wilmington, Delaware as part of Manufacturing Day, and I met with the workers of M. Davis & Sons, which makes industrial equipment for firms like Phillips 66 and DuPont. Some of the employees told me, in fact, most of the employees told me, they knew as early as 7th grade that their interests lay in engineering and manufacturing and making things, and that the traditional course of high school to college to a career probably didn't suit them. These workers chose to go to technical high schools, and I use that word carefully, chose to go to technical high schools and pursue additional skills at community colleges, giving them the credentials to participate in apprenticeships at M. Davis, earn certifications as an electrician, as a welder, as a mechanic or a plumber, and receive a paycheck at the same time. Today, they have good careers with incomes that allow them to own their homes and provide for their families, all with no college debt. I'm not against going to college. The point here is there is no single uniform route to a successful career or to reliable income, as Glenn was talking about. In business, labor, and government, we have to work together to offer Americans a more diverse menu of training options needed to compete in the 21st century economy. We need to offer more career and technical education programs that start in middle and high school. We need to partner with employers and prepare more students for in-demand jobs in their communities. We need a more nimble training system that allows workers to gain additional industry-recognized credentials over an extended period of time. We need to build off of programs like the one Governor Markell has adopted in Delaware, the Pathway to Prosperity, which enables students to transition smoothly through high school into post-secondary education and on to family-supporting careers. This initiative has been launched in 11 states and should be a model for our entire nation because it creates a virtuous cycle that benefits individuals who need access to jobs and employers who need access to permanent talent. At the Commerce Department, we've taken a lead role on skills development through our Skills for Business initiative, and we've worked closely with our partners in the administration, academia, nonprofits, and the private sector to better align our worker education and training programs with the jobs in our communities. As part of that effort, we are focused on an issue long championed by CAP, investments in apprenticeships. We're working with the Departments of Labor and Education to achieve President Obama's goal of doubling the number of registered apprenticeships in 2020. That will only bring our country to about 850,000 apprenticeships. If we had the equivalent number as Germany, we'd have about 7 million. And we at the Department of Commerce are partnering with leading foundations and Case Western Reserve University on the first ever U.S. study to analyze the return on investment for employers who utilize apprenticeships. In addition, just as we're preparing students for jobs in evolving sectors like manufacturing, we must do the same in emerging fields like cybersecurity, a fast-growing sector with more than 230,000 job openings across the country. These steps are just part of our strategy to invest in our workforce, to meet the demands of business, and to create lasting value for our middle class and our economy. To secure our long-term competitiveness, our path forward must ensure that America continues to be a place where anyone can contribute their ideas and abilities to our prosperity. The United States has been built, strengthened, and sustained by generation after generation of immigrants, and this remains true today. Advancing permanent, comprehensive immigration reform is not just a moral obligation. It is a matter of economic necessity. If we do not welcome the best and the brightest to our shores, if we do not attract leading minds, workers, and innovators to our campuses and communities, put simply, we will be left behind. To move forward on our path to immigration reform, we must first move our nation past common misperceptions about immigration and its impact on our businesses and economy. For starters, let's discuss some demographic realities. Despite what some in the media or some running for president claim, unauthorized immigration has remained stable over the past half-decade. Overall, migration from Mexico has declined, period. Total arrivals from China, India, and elsewhere in Asia are on the rise. And today, the average unauthorized family has been here for more than a decade and is integrated into our society. So next, let's consider the economic realities. Immigrants and their children play an essential role in sustaining the growth and competitiveness of our workforce. As CAP's research has found, unauthorized immigrants are already living and working in our nation. Bringing them off the economic sidelines would ultimately translate into higher wages for all Americans, higher tax revenues for the federal treasury, and more jobs added throughout our communities. Allowing them to fully participate in our economy would also provide these families with a sense of dignity, a sense of belonging, a sense that they too can pursue and realize the American dream. Finally, let's consider their impact on competitiveness. Right now, there are 1.1 million foreign students studying in our universities. Nationally, these potential immigrants make up over 40% of our master's or PhD candidates in STEM fields, expertise we desperately need. Yet once we train many of these talented men and women, more often than not, we force them to leave. This makes no sense. We should not educate these young people, then require them to return home. We should staple a green card to their diplomas when they graduate. We cannot afford to lose the students who may invent the next Google, eBay, IBM, or Home Depot, all started by immigrants or their children. We cannot afford to lose the dreamers who work in our businesses, serve in our military, and study on our college campuses. The young people who may be future teachers, police officers, or public servants. The youth who are American in every way except on paper. We must ensure that the men and women who move here, who study here, who bring their skills here, and who start families and businesses here are welcome to stay in the United States of America. Our values, our history, and the demands of our economy dictate that we enact comprehensive immigration reform without further delay. To sustain our long-term competitiveness, our path forward also requires us to nurture and support our innovators and our entrepreneurs. Between 1/3 and 1/2 of economic growth in the United States can be attributed to technological and scientific innovation. And since our nation's founding, Americans have applied their ingenuity to develop great ideas into great businesses right here in the United States. From Ben Franklin harnessing the power of electricity, to Steve Jobs revolutionizing the personal computer, to the founders of Uber and Lyft and Airbnb defining the sharing economy, innovators have driven the prosperity in this country in every generation. The same is true today, and our entrepreneurs must be able to bring their ideas from lab to market, access needed capital, and sell their products in markets around the world. To meet this challenge, the Department of Commerce serves as America's innovation agency. We issue patents to protect intellectual property. We offer startups the tools to think global from day one. We deploy entrepreneurship ambassadors to mentor and inspire young innovators at home and abroad. We work with communities to develop comprehensive economic development strategies that maximize their strengths and attract manufacturers to their markets. And we support advanced manufacturing, with the creation of institutes focused on pre-competitive research in new technologies like 3D printing, photonics, digital design, and lightweight metals. Through our department's effort to spur innovation, we aim to set the conditions that allow any American to start and grow a business. This task is essential to our long-term prosperity, because when entrepreneurs have the chance to pursue their dreams, they form leading firms, they enhance our competitiveness, and they create good jobs and careers here at home. Along with more strategic skills training, smarter immigration policy, and stronger support for innovation, our path forward must ensure our people, goods, and ideas can move at the rapid pace of the 21st century. Investments in our infrastructure are investments in long-term value, because our businesses cannot compete, our families cannot succeed, and our economy cannot grow without a strong and sturdy foundation. And at a time when technological innovation and economic growth go hand in hand, our digital infrastructure is central to our competitiveness. Recognizing this fact, the Obama administration has invested in more than 113 miles of broadband nationwide. President Obama and his team rolled out Connect Ed, an initiative to connect 99% of students to the digital age through next-generation broadband and high-speed wireless in our schools and libraries. However, despite this progress, we still have a digital divide in our nation. Over 20% of homes in the United States still do not have high-speed internet, placing our communities and our people at a disadvantage. Last month, the White House released a report from the Broadband Opportunity Council, which I co-chair. The report describes concrete steps that more than 20 federal agencies will take over the next 18 months to eliminate barriers and promote broadband investment and adoption. And with these actions and more to come, we can ensure that America's path forward is built on a digitally connected foundation designed to accommodate the pace of change in today's global economy. At the same time, our physical infrastructure has long suffered from underinvestment. That short-sighted approach only serves to hamstring our economic growth and hamper our competitiveness. Right now, we need legislation that provides adequate long-term funding of our infrastructure to address the immediate maintenance backlogs, to support needed expansions, and to alleviate congestion for commuters. We need a predictable, consistent, stable stream of funding to allow state and local governments to plan and execute urgent projects. We need to make it clear that the United States of America, we cannot fund our infrastructure 3 months at a time, as we've been doing over the past decade. We must make long-term investments in our roads and bridges, our rail lines, our ports and airports, our broadband networks. As I said when I began, we as leaders have to make choices. We have to choose to focus on long-term success, even if the short-term course seems easier and more expedient. We have to choose to make smart investments that reflect our priorities for the long term and our vision for the future. In government, that means we have to choose a budget that has lasting value for the economy. After passing another continuing resolution, Congress will soon face this choice once again. Will they pass a responsible budget that invests in our entrepreneurs, our economy, our families, our military readiness, our schools, and our infrastructure, in the very foundation of our competitiveness? Or will they leave the so-called sequester in place, which would automatically force short-sighted cuts to investments and services, regardless of their effect on our economy or our national security? Reducing investments for short-term gain is no way to run a business when you're trying to grow and compete. And playing politics with our budget is no way to run our government when our global competitiveness is at stake. I know the choice I would make. I know the choice President Obama believes is right for our future. And I know the leaders at CAP and in this room want a path forward that spurs lasting growth for our economy, that promotes economic security for our families and our companies, and that ensures the economic prosperity of all Americans. Moving forward, let's work together to make the right long-term choices for our country, choices that will create value for our communities, choices that will sustain U.S. competitiveness around the world, choices that will keep America open for business. Thank you for inviting me here today.
I want to thank Secretary Pritzker for her remarks and really dovetailing the connections between the private and public sector. We've had a range of speakers here today, leaders in business, leaders in our government, all focused on how to ensure inclusive prosperity through both public policy and policy change at the corporate level. This is work we will continue to do, and I really just want to say thank you to everyone in this room for being here and for engaging with us today. Thank you.